Observational proficiency is one of those investigative skills that sounds simple on the surface, but in practice, it's extremely powerful. At its core, it's the ability to notice small but important details in people, processes, and environments that others might easily miss. It's a bit different from critical thinking. Critical thinking is about analyzing information you already have. Observational proficiency is about picking up new information in real-time, things you can see, hear, or sense in the moment that help you better understand what's really going on. One of the most important applications of this skill is during interviews, especially when it comes to assessing a person's demeanor. Interviews give investigators a chance not just to listen to what someone is saying, but also to observe how they're saying it. A good starting point is to establish a baseline. Early in the interview, when you're asking simple, non-threatening questions, most people are more relaxed. This is when you can observe their normal behavior, how they speak, how they sit, and what their natural communication style looks like. That baseline becomes very useful later on. As the interview moves into more sensitive topics, a skilled investigator pays attention to any changes. For example, does the person suddenly become more defensive, less certain, quieter, or more restless? Things like avoiding eye contact, fidgeting, or changes in tone can all be meaningful, but they always need to be interpreted carefully and in context, not taken as automatic signs of dishonesty. It's also important to apply what you might call a reasonable person approach. Not every emotional reaction means something suspicious. In fact, sometimes strong emotion is completely appropriate, especially in traumatic situations. People may cry, become angry, or shut down simply because the topic is difficult. Good investigators recognize that behavior has to be interpreted in context, including cultural differences. In some cultures, for example, avoiding direct one contact, especially with authority figures, is a sign of respect, not deception. Observational skills are also very useful when it comes to identifying potential witnesses. Often, the initial report doesn't capture everyone who may have seen or heard something important. This is where being physically present can make a real difference. By going to the location shortly after an incident, an investigator may notice bystanders, nearby employees, or passersby who were not originally identified but may have relevant information. It also helps to understand how work actually flows in that environment. By observing routines and layouts, you can often figure out who would realistically have been in a position to see or hear something. In some cases, additional information comes from surveillance footage, access logs, or other system data that shows exactly who was present at a given time. Another key part of observational proficiency is looking at workplace conditions. There's a well-known idea in investigations called go and see for yourself, which basically means you don't rely only on documents or descriptions, you visit the actual location. Seeing the environment firsthand gives you context that paperwork often misses. For example, a witness might say they overheard a conversation, but if you're standing in the same spot and realize there's loud machinery running nearby, you can start to question whether that was actually possible. In safety-related investigations, this kind of observation can also help identify hazards directly. Things like crowded workspaces, poor visibility, or unsafe equipment setups often become obvious only when you physically see the environment. Sometimes, observation also leads directly to evidence. It's not uncommon to come across things that were never formally reported, items in plain sight, missing equipment, or inappropriate materials left in shared spaces. Observational proficiency also plays a role in spotting inconsistencies between what someone says and what can actually be observed. Sometimes this shows up in behavior. A person might appear unusually calm or detached when describing something serious, or on the other hand, they may show signs of heightened anxiety that seem out of proportion to the situation. These kinds of behavioral cues can be useful, but again, they are never definitive on their own. They're just one piece of the puzzle. Other times, inconsistencies are more concrete. For example, a witness might claim they saw a specific event clearly, but a site visit or simple measurement shows that it would have been physically impossible from their stated position. There are also more structured approaches, like kinesic observation, which looks at whether a person's body language aligns with what they are saying. But even here, the key point is the same. Behavior is interpreted in context, not used as proof by itself. Finally, there are different ways investigators can apply observation depending on the situation. Sometimes it's active, you're engaging with employees while they perform tasks, asking questions and understanding why things are done a certain way. Other times it's passive, where you simply observe a process without interfering so you can see how things normally unfold. And in some cases, it can even be participatory, where the investigator takes part in the task to better understand the workflow and the challenges involved. In short, observational proficiency is about developing a trained eye for detail. It helps investigators move beyond what people say and start understanding what can actually be seen, verified, and experienced in the real world.